Give it a second. We should now be live and recording. All right. So Chair, if you'd like to announce calling the meeting to order.
I now call the meeting to order, the meeting of the Downtown Community Task Force of January 21st, 2001. No, not 2001, 2021. Sorry. maybe I'm a little, sorry.
Time traveler.
Staff, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Member Thompson.
Here.
Member Ondersek. So you're muted if you want to wave to me. Okay.
Here.
Thank
How's
you.
that?
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, can hear you. Member Mayer.
Here.
Member Von Huen.
Here.
Member Vargas Smith.
Here.
Member Reed. Do not see. So he is currently absent. Member Coyne.
Here.
Member Tai.
Here.
And Member Varjane.
Yes. Here.
Great. So Member Reed is currently absent. Is there a motion to excuse Member Reed this evening?
I make a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Okay.
Second.
A second.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Tai. So Chair, if you...
All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Okay. Member Reed is excused. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read the declaration of the DCTF procedures. Meetings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the DCF directs all activity during the hearing. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing or meeting. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available online on the City Clerk's website, as well as on the Downtown Precise Plan website. Chair?
Thank you, Leslie. We'll now move to the consent calendar.
The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted or approved by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. So we have one item on the consent calendar, and that is the Downtown Community Task Force meeting minutes of the December 17th, 2020 meeting.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
I had a question, but I don't know if I'm too late. I can ask it in
The
an
House
email.
consent calendar has been approved.
Do you have a question on the motion?
I just had a question on the meeting minutes. I'm not sure when to ask. Just guide me, Leslie.
Yeah, so before we make a motion to approve, that's when you would want, we haven't taken the vote yet, so go ahead and ask your question. Do you want to remove it for discussion, or you just have a general question?
I just have a general question because this was the first time I was looking at the meeting minutes formally. I mean, the meeting minutes felt more like report that we discussed this agenda item, but there wasn't kind of an action item list or like documenting what we discussed or what we requested as next steps. So is Zoom recording the only place it's documented, or is there other places that the city staff is documenting any particular request DCTF members make? You know, we had a lot of things, we gave you a laundry list. I was just wondering, you know, where that gets documented other than like listening to a 2-hour, 3-hour Zoom meeting.
Correct. So I, as the staff liaison, take notes and do follow-ups, as you'll probably see some emails to all of you from me following up on items from the meeting. So the meeting minutes themselves they are just a report. They're not a copy of the discussion. So for the public reviewing the meeting minutes, it's not going to give you the full discussion. You'll have to go back and refer to the video.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so Chair, if you want to go ahead and take a motion again.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve last meeting's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right. All in favor of approving last meeting's meeting minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. And I guess I had to say aye too. Aye. So passes unanimously. Meeting minutes have been approved. Last meeting.
Can we note that Matt is in the meeting now?
Yes, thank you. And let the record show that Member Reed joined the meeting at 6:05 p.m.
Yeah, I apologize. My calendar item has the public link. I don't know, it's a recurring and I don't know, Leslie, if you could re-forward that.
Yes, I will do that.
I just also wanted to note there are 23 people in public audience.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so the next thing we'll be moving on to the general business.
So our first item under general business is a presentation by our Public Works traffic engineer. And I'm not sure, Jonathan, am I introducing you for the presentation?
Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
I'm going to introduce Justin, but if I could make a
Okay,
quick statement.
perfect.
So just real quick, can everybody hear me correctly? Just wanted to make sure. My audio's been having some issues, but so thanks for that. My name is Mike Liu. I'm the Assistant Director of our Department of Public Works at the City of Santa Clara, and I work with our development group and our transportation group. And I've been with Santa Clara since mid-2018. I sat on the RFP for the Downtown Precise Plan, so I'm pretty familiar with some of you folks on this meeting. But today, we have our traffic engineer Jonathan Yee. He's on the Zoom call, and he's going to present information regarding transit as well as information regarding the Lafayette flex lane or what we call a reversible lane. He'll give you some background on that and some information in terms of volume and whatnot. So just wanted to, say thank you for us to be here, and also wanted to introduce Jonathan. Jonathan, he's our transportation manager. He's been with us since mid last year, and he comes from Burbank and filled the vacancy that we had for some time. So we're very happy to have him on board. He's been doing a great job since he's been here. Participating more in these in meetings moving forward. So I'll set a PowerPoint to walk you through, and thank you for that. Turn it over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Mike. Can everyone hear me okay right now? Oh, great.
Yes.
I'll talk a little bit louder. Is that better?
Yeah.
Great, thanks. So good evening, everyone. Once again, thank you, Mike, for the introduction. Jonathan Yee with the City of Santa Clara Public Works and the new Transportation Manager. And I'm going to go over a small presentation that I have prepared to present some information. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So once again, this is a small presentation to go over some transit information and the Lafayette Street reversible lanes. This first slide shows the existing transit information in downtown. What you'll notice is in the center of the map is the yellow area highlighting the study area, the Downtown Precise Plan. And what you'll notice to the right there are some circles that actually represent walk times from the existing transit station. That's where the Caltrain station currently is. And we also notice on this map are various color lines that represent PTA bus routes. And upon looking at this map, you'll notice that there are a lot of color lines generally within the map, directly connecting the downtown area to the train station and to other areas of the city. There's actually 4 VTA bus routes, and the Caltrain station is within a 10-minute walk. So if you look closely at this map, under walking distance, there's 2 circles there. There's a smaller, darker circle immediately around the train station, and that represents about a quarter mile, which is typically a 5-minute walk for a transit user. And what you'll also notice is a lighter colored circle, which represents a half mile, which is typically a 10-minute walk. And what you can see from this map is that right on that border of the study area, it's about a 10-minute walk from the train station. And so generally, this map is showing that downtown has adequate and good transit service. Many cities throughout the state and even in the country have issues with what we call first mile, last mile connections. And what that means is that transit may not always take the user to where they want to go. The stop could be a quarter mile, an eighth mile, even up to a mile away from where the users actually want to go. That does have an impact on transit usage. And I just wanted to highlight that when we look at this map here, downtown is going to appear to have those type of issues. On this next table, I wanted to highlight the existing usage of the bus stops around the downtown area. So I had mentioned that BTA has adequate bus service around the area. And what this table shows is the average number of bus riders in a weekday. This data was taken in February 2020, and it is actually publicly available, as you can see with the link down in the lower left. And generally, what you can see is that various stops around the area typically have about 100 riders each weekday. And what's clear is that the Santa Clara station has a significantly higher usage of transit riders. It's about 1,600 riders per weekday over the 100 riders. And this next slide ties into Caltrain ridership. This map here shows the Caltrain line, and I wanted to highlight the Caltrain ridership numbers. This table represents the number of riders using Caltrain on an average weekday. The numbers were taken from 2019, pre-COVID. I forgot to mention that in February 2020 on the last slide, those numbers were also before the COVID-19 pandemic. But continuing on with this slide, these numbers here are taken from 2019. And what you'll notice, I just represented 4 various stations along the route. And generally what you'll see is that Palo Alto has the highest numbers, and Santa Clara Station does have less usage than the other stations. And so kind of tying it all together, what are some factors that impact usage of buses and trains? First, there's the general costs of transit versus parking or driving, or even taking rideshare. So a very classic example is in San Francisco, right? If you were to drive to San Francisco by car, let's say from the East Bay, right? You would go in your vehicle, you would pay a toll to cross a bridge, you would drive into the city, you would likely pay for parking, right? All those have direct monetary costs, while it could be cheaper to take transit or even take BART, right? So that does have an impact on using transit. Another factor is the convenience and the travel time. So if I take the same example of going to San Francisco from the East Bay, right? The Bay Bridge is typically congested during rush hour. It'll take some time for you to just drive to the city in general. Also, maybe even just a circle around to find parking close to your destination, right? All of that is travel time for the user. And so taking BART, for example, and getting off and walking 5 minutes, that could potentially be a lot quicker for a user. And so that's another factor as related to usage of transit, right? It's travel time. And a third usage, which I wanted to highlight because it directly correlates to the downtown precise plan, are the land uses nearby to transit. So this picture shows potential rendering of a land use change that could be proposed. It's showing how there's active retail directly fronting Lafayette, which could be immediately close to transit. And so active retail is one example of land use that could potentially attract transit user. So for example, if our city had gas stations and car washes immediately next to the BART station, right? Those specific land uses aren't great attractors for uses of transit, right? They're very car centric. So that's just an example of how land uses could potentially impact transit usage. And in this next slide, I wanted to highlight some changes that directly relate to the factors that I mentioned earlier. As I had mentioned, land uses do play a role in transit usage, and the Downtown Precise Plan, it does recommend various changes that could definitely promote or enhance the use of transit. Number 2 on the slide, the city does have an adopted bicycle master plan. And one thing I'd like to point out with bicycles is the proximity to transit. So earlier I had mentioned on the right side of that screen, there was light circles representing walking times, where that darker circle is a 5-minute walk and the lighter circle is a 10-minute walk. Well, if the bicycle plan implements bicycle routes, such as on Benton Street, you'll notice that there's a darker blue circle there on the screen, which represents a 10-minute bicycle ride. So you'll notice that the 10-minute bicycle circle, it actually entirely encompasses the downtown area and closer. And so what you'll notice is that bicycle facilities do expand proximity of land uses to transit, just because it is a quicker mode to take. And the third thing I'd like to highlight is the increase of connectivity to the station just through the future BART station, right? So the future BART station, it will enhance connectivity specifically to the East Bay and ultimately to other areas. And once that BART station is in place, that'll definitely enhance service to the area in general. And I did want to tie that into the discussion of a shuttle, specifically between downtown and the station. As I mentioned earlier, there's various factors that relate to transit usage, and those factors will also apply to a potential shuttle that could be considered. The existing transit usage around the area looks pretty good. A shuttle would definitely enhance that coverage, but I would just like to mention that it would definitely take additional study to determine the specific benefits of that shuttle versus the costs of trying to provide additional service through a shuttle to enhance the existing transit usage. And now I wanted to switch gears to look at the Lafayette reversible lanes. On the screen is a map showing the area around the Lafayette corridor. So that green area shows Lafayette. Within that black rectangle with the dashed line is the area where the reversible lane operates. And before I go into the operation, I just wanted to highlight that to the north of the area, there's various offices and employers. And Lafayette is 4 total lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. And to the south of that area of the rectangle, of the black rectangle, the street is also 4 lanes and directly connects to Interstate 880 and further south to the city of San Jose. And what you'll notice is that in the middle area is the area serving the Santa Clara University in downtown, right? The roadway narrows there and it provides generally 2 total lanes, 1 lane in each direction, with a center lane and having parking. And that narrowing of the roadway limits the capacity. And here is a similar map showing that capacity limitation that I was talking about earlier. So what you'll notice is that to the north, above that same black rectangle, Lafayette has 2 lanes coming from the north into downtown. And if you look to the bottom of the map, Lafayette is also 2 lanes coming from the south into the same area. And as I had mentioned earlier, the roadway narrows and therefore the capacity is limited. And so the purpose of the reversible lane is to add that roadway capacity while maintaining street parking. And so for everyone's reference, we did research and that found that council did approve the reversible lanes way back in 1986, which is actually 5 years after I was born. And I just wanted to highlight that the purpose of the reversible lane is to change the operation of that middle lane to maintain that capacity. So in the morning rush hour, it adds 1 lane northbound. So there's 2 lanes northbound, 1 lane southbound. In the afternoon rush hour, it reverses. So it adds 1 lane southbound. So the road is 2 lanes southbound and 1 lane north. And at other times of the day, that middle lane operates as a typical, what we call a 2-way left turn lane, where cars can enter the roadway to turn left off Lafayette, or if they're turning from the side street, they could use that middle area to wait until it's clear and then enter the roadway safely. And what I wanted to show on this next slide was some levels of traffic, right? So why does this lane, why did council approve that reversible lane? So what this graphic shows is the number of cars during rush hour within 1 lane of traffic. And so this data was taken in 2019, once again before COVID. And I've highlighted four example streets there. So Coleman Avenue, San Tomas Expressway, Scott Boulevard, and then Lafayette. And so what you'll notice there is that Coleman and San Tomas, they carry about 1,000 cars during rush hour in a single lane. Scott is about half that, which is about 500. And what you'll notice in that blue line, or in the blue colored graph, is that with that reversible lane, we provide that capacity to have that number be similar to Scott. And so potentially what could happen is that if that reversible lane is removed, there'll be an impact of 500 cars per hour, which is shown by that red bar there above the blue bar. So what does that mean? It means that potentially it could be impact to congestion and to the surrounding area or neighborhood, right? We could potentially be detouring 500 cars per hour if that lane is removed. And I say detouring, meaning that there hasn't been a very detailed study done, but because there's 500 cars per hour impacted, those 500 cars could either stay on Lafayette, add to the congestion to the street. If that congestion could potentially become intolerable for the drivers, they could potentially detour into the neighborhood or into other streets. And so I just wanted to state that the reversible lane in Lafayette is not specifically considered in the Downtown Precise Plan, and that a detailed traffic study would be required, including some public outreach to the surrounding area, just so everyone is aware of what's being considered. And that was the last slide in my presentation. And now I'd just like to once again thank everyone for the opportunity, and I can open up to questions from the group.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate the presentation. Are there questions from the task force members? Let me see. Letitia, go ahead.
Okay, so hey, thanks for the presentation, Jonathan. And actually, I just wanted you all to share with task force that I'm on the BPAC for Santa Clara now. So definitely I'll try to bridge in the whole bike and pedestrian infrastructure and transit on both the commissions, public commissions I represent. So first quick question, actually it's more of a pointer. I know you compared the Caltrain stations, but all the Caltrain stations you compared Santa Clara to, they are, we don't get any bullet train. We get only local services. So like, I understand Palo Alto gets every Caltrain, even if they don't want to build any affordable housing, they still get to have every Caltrain stop in their city. So I don't think so it was a valid comparison. So if we compare to Lawrence or any other station which only gets local trains, that data comparison would be more, I just feel, acceptable. Because Mountain View, Sunnyvale, they all get bullet trains. I have been a pre-COVID super commuter taking Caltrain from Santa Clara or Sunnyvale stations all the way to San Francisco every day. So just from that, other thing is we also have Amtrak. That's just an under-recognized train we have, but it is a good connection to Sacramento and jobs in East Bay all the way to Oakland. And other thing is, like, I know the distance of the quarter mile and half mile works really well in terms of numbers, but the conditions do not. And we really need to see how pedestrian conditions in terms of like day and night safety, crosswalk distances, like El Camino is just I feel like El Camino is just a 16 feet high wall or a sound wall on a highway when it comes.
And I think we can go to the next slide. This shows the development. So the area I was just referring to, you can see the roof slope right in that area. So basically it goes from roughly a 9-foot height to sloping upward towards the roof slopes upward towards the condominium units. Same thing along Homestead. We actually stepped the building back on Homestead to give it a 1-story level in that area. Again, to step it down to the street, sort of transitioning, if you will, into the neighborhood across the street on Homestead, which is, you know, 2-story homes, etc. So we're doing a 1-story step down. The area behind the 2 Victorians has 3 stories of residential above the parking only, as does the area immediately to the right of the Victorian, that whole strip right there. That then terminates, there is no more structure above it. And then the balance of the structure to the right of that, as you'll see in the future slides, goes into the taller part of the building. It goes up to 6-story. So taking into consideration the input that was given by the community and many stakeholders in the community and the downtown task force, we basically have redesigned the building entirely to create a stepped form of architecture, stepping down to the Victorian scale and using elements from the prior suggestion that was given from our other architectural project, which has more of a downtown feel and vertical elements of buildings rather than a large single structure. Next slide, please. So this is, if you see the far left, are the 2 Victorian homes in their original location with landscaping and surrounded in context. To the left of them across the street, you'll see there's the 2-story bluish house that is there in the background. So basically stepping the scale. To the right of the red house, the red older home, is you see a 3-story brick building. Then we step back the architecture back further to the upper level. To the right of it, we have again a 3-story piece that'll be on the street level. We then step away from the street and step for 2 more floors above it in order to again create a strong stepping of the architecture, so it really feels that it is indeed bowing down and giving homage to the Victorians and stepping down the scale as we go in that direction. Then we have the center element, which is the main entrance to the residential building, sort of more of an Art Deco motif to sort of give a nod, if you will, to a lot of the Art Deco references that were done in the downtown historically, including the old theater. Then we have more of a modern transition to the right on those 2 forms of architecture. And then to the far right, that building actually wraps around the corner and faces Franklin and continues down, so that it does indeed give the feeling and appearance of authenticity, where it actually wraps the corner as a proper building as you would have in a downtown. So this is sort of more looking towards the vision, the idea, the notion of the 3 proposals that were set forth in, you know, sort of the community planning stages of stepped buildings, stepped architecture, some elements that can actually respond to the neighborhood, to the surroundings, while creating the density that is desired in the downtown and the height that is specified all throughout the downtown. But then, as you see, it tapers down. So if you can see, there's a diagonal line, literally, going from the Victorians up to the architecture. So it really creates a proper downscaling, if you will, of the project. So that's generally what we're proposing for starting that dialogue and that conversation to the next step of what we're looking to do. So we're looking very much forward to everyone's input and thoughts, and as we move forward.
Thank you, Sal.
You're
I'll
welcome.
take comments from the DCTF members now. So please raise your hand. I'll call on you. First hand I see is Atisha.
I just want a quick clarification that are we commenting on design and how it fits our downtown? Or are we just making recommendations that there should be a moratorium or not? Like, what's the essence of this discussion at this point?
So at this point, it's how does this project fit into what we believe, or you individually would believe would fit in this area, because it's coming before we have a chance to really carve out parameters and guidelines and zoning. So comment on architecture, size, massing, anything.
I'm just going to take a few minutes to list down mine and come back again. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next hand I see is Anna. Go ahead.
Hi, Sal. The design. How are you?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. Sal has a few buildings on my street in the Old Quad that he does a meticulous job of maintaining year after year. They're beautiful Victorian style, some craftsman elements. So I just want to commend you on respecting what the input came from the community was about not interfering with the historic homes on the corner. As far as the design, that seems to is great that way. The elements that you're proposing, the height, and is there going to be more historical elements incorporated? It seems like a little austere. I do like the Art Deco piece in the middle with that almost crowning jewel top on that. But is that something that you're willing to work with as far as adding more elements to it?
Well, I think as we go further and develop, we'll be refining the design. I think some features that might be worth pointing out as well that are hard to see because there's so much happening is right there where the cursor is, there's a large bay window in that building that sort of drives the focus of those few floors to the center of the building. So there'll be other things that as we develop it will be more visually apparent. So there's a lot of buildings to sort of look at, I guess. But yes, we're open to sort of working through the process.
And are any of these, as far as the Victorians on the corner, how are you going to utilize them? You said they were going to be residential, but I used to live in near the Hollywood area, near Larchmont Village in LA for a while. And a lot of those craftsman homes, they converted into commercial uses, like these wonderful little healthy food type of restaurants or yoga studios, that kind of thing. Is that something you'd consider for these historic homes? Or
I think that, Randy Lamb will probably need to make the final decision on whether they go residential or commercial, or it could be flex space. It could be live work. I know that in the corner house, that had been, I think, a photographer for the longest time, for years and years. So it is a great location commercially as well. So I think those are things that can be thought through, and maybe having the flexibility of doing either would make good sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anna. The next hand is Chan.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Sal. I just have a couple questions. So, one is, I think there's some confusion as to whether the units are going to be condos for sale or if they're going to be rental units. Is that something that, there's been a decision made, or is that still sort of up in the air?
So the developer, Randy Lamb, has not made that final decision yet, and that is because we don't know which he doesn't know, and none of us know the direction the economy will go. So it just really depends on how things develop. It's, let's say, strange times, to say the least.
Yeah.
Understatement of the century. So that'll be determined as we move forward.
Yeah. So related to that question, I mean, looking at the other development that's, further down the street on Monroe, a lot of the retail spaces on the bottom remain vacant. And obviously that could be, an impact of COVID and the economy sort of taking a different direction. But is there any consideration as to how big the retail spaces will be sized so that there could be different types of businesses that can come in? Because my understanding is that with big developments like this, you try to have larger retail spaces, but that, doesn't necessarily maybe attract the kind of retail partners that we would want in the downtown area. So just wondering if there's been consideration there and sort of where the thinking is in terms of the retail sizes.
Excellent question. You see that our retail area on the bottom right-hand corner is roughly 2,834 square feet. That can be divided into any smaller size. For example, if there's like a little tiny cafe or a little bookstore, any type of neighborhood serving use, that can be broken down. Plus, we will pre-plumb this area with grease traps and so on, which was not done across the street in the new building. So for anyone to go in there with a restaurant, they'd have so much overhead to try to do it post-construction on a podium structure. It's cost prohibitive. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So no one can afford that. But by incorporating them from the beginning, we still offer that opportunity where people can go in there and have a nice, viable coffee shop or little bakery or whatnot. So we are definitely, that is a concern, but we're tailoring it so that the space can be very flexible.
Awesome. And then my one last question is just on one of the slides that you showed, you had some bar graphs of just, people's responses. How many people responded to that in total? Because there's no percentage. Yeah.
This was done through the city's efforts. I think maybe Leslie or someone on the city side, or Adam or someone, can respond to that. I am not sure how many people responded to that. I know I did. I was one of them, but
I think this is the response to the three concepts of how our downtown is going to develop. It's not specific to his, it's a more general.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. I just want to know how many people are captured. It's a sample size question, because if this is only reflecting 20 people, if I knew what the sample size was, I could better, sort of interpret the distribution of people's responses.
Is that on the left side? It says number.
Yeah. Jen, it was over 450 people who responded.
Okay, great.
To the overall survey, yeah.
That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. The next hand I see is Deborah.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, Deborah.
Could you go back to the sketch of the block, or the buildings, I should say?
Of course.
No, the mock-up of the building.
The rendering, yes.
Yeah, the rendering. Thank you.
There it is.
Yes. First of all, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the effort of, honoring the historical nature of the area, because that really is one of the purposes of trying to restore the downtown, is to honor our past while embracing the future. I like the way that you're kind of integrating that historical element into both the number of floors and the buildings closest to the historical houses. And I also love the Art Deco element. But one thing I wanted to comment on is the pedestrian experience, which we've been talking about a little bit tonight. Since this will be kind of the far end of the downtown, it may be kind of the terminus, and people might walk all the way through the downtown to get to, say, that corner restaurant or something. But are these sidewalks going to be wide enough to really have, or to echo the feeling that we're trying to give to the downtown, which is a true pedestrian space, perhaps for a sidewalk tables, or for an art piece, something that was interactive, or a place for people to really come and gather.
The sidewalk images. Sorry, Deborah. Okay. So yes, these images, if you look at the one on the top left, that's actually a pretty accurate scale of the
Okay.
sidewalks. The sidewalks are dictated by the downtown area. And so I think we have a total of 19 or 20 feet from curb to face of buildings. So it's a huge area, very much like you see in this top left-hand corner picture. So you're going to have park strip, sidewalk, area for tables and chairs, and so on. So what we're anticipating and hopeful for is a truly active street pedestrian experience, like you see here on the left, top left.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That was my question. Just wanted to make sure that was being included in the design.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a great notion that the city has and the community has, and we definitely want to incorporate that. And also one more thing I forgot to mention is that our retail fronts, we're anticipating that they're going to be operable walls. So you can actually open up the wall entirely. And that way you can have full connectivity between indoor and outdoor. So that experience is enhanced, you see?
Yes, I've seen something like that in Sunnyvale.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Works really well. Really
Yeah.
well, especially in COVID times. It's fantastic to have more open, fresh air.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Next Dan Ondersack.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Sal.
Hello.
So what I'm going to do is kind of take a step back on us, on DCTF, and what our why is. And you know, what we're here to do is create a precise plan and hopefully a form-based code that's attractive to citizens. So we're taking citizens' inputs and inputs from developers alike to create this plan, and we've been doing so for 2 years or whatever. And I think the benefit of that is that the citizens have input on what they want, to Deborah's point, the pedestrian experience, how they feel in the downtown. And that's got a lot to do with what is the sidewalk width? Is that going to be cohesive with what we put on Franklin? Is it going to match what we put on Washington, et cetera? How big are the step backs going to be? How tall will those retail first floor windows be? And all of that comes through study, by talking to retail experts on our part, as well as the citizenry. And then from that, we create this precise plan. And that's why we sit here for 4 hours a night. And, we're in our 12th meeting here. I feel we need to determine all of that, a precise plan to ensure the character, the quality, the scope of what this community wants, and which we feel is like a lovely pedestrian experience in the downtown. So, I see improvement here, and I appreciate that. But as I've said, I advocate for waiting for that precise plan, and I think it's going to benefit you a lot. I mean, the inputs, your sample study, states that. We put out one thing on the ROD site. We got 298 comments as of 4 o'clock today. I double checked it, and 90% were negative. And I think, by going it alone, which is what you're doing, you're taking the step before we hit this precise plan and, go forward with the community inputs. By going it alone, you're taking all the bullets, and I commend you for that, but, that's a tough way to go. I would advocate for waiting for us to have this precise plan dialed, and it might be pretty close to what you have right now, but that's my input. So,
Thank you, Dan. Atisha.
Hey Sal, I know I was one of the early ones to comment in your public meeting as well. And thank you so much for listening to some of the comments. I definitely see and value preserving the history that exists. I'm very much about preserving. I definitely represent a different spectrum of age group. And what I consider I want to see in my city, definitely more modern architecture. I know, and we need to have a mix, but like, I feel like history that is we need to conserve, but replicating history, I've worked for Disney a bit in my career and on Disney parks. And I just feel like it's very Disney's when you create architecture from, 1960s and 30s and 40s, or even like 18th century, 19th centuries. So that's just my general comment. I'm one who would like to see more modern architecture and really testing our boundaries and becoming trend-setting. Other comment, and this is for DCTF, city, and you as well. I mean, this is exciting. Even before we have a plan, we are seeing developers' interest, a lot of private money wanting to pour into our downtown. So definitely this DCTF and the work that the city staff has done is, going somewhere. It's not that we're not attracting developers already. So that is great. In those terms, kind of like latching on to Dan's comments, if you would look at, some of the development standards, specifically like parking ratios and other things that the DCTF is proposing, I think it's going to really impact the pro forma of your project positively. So it might be in your benefit to wait, especially, the parking ratios are going down, the retail parking is not required. So I'm seeing that you're building to the antiquated ratios. And that's something, it's a test for DCTF as well, that are those assumptions correct? But, like there is a trade-off of you waiting a little bit more financially, actually, it might benefit. My other kind of in the same questions are now, I'm just adding some questions. What's the DU per acre we are achieving in these units? Like how many units or density like DU per acre?
I think we have 63, and we are, why don't I do a calculation and get back to you during the
That's great. And some of my other questions, and because there have been so much discussion on bikes and pedestrian, like what's the bike infrastructure you're providing to the people living here? Because unless you provide them like, bike parking in a condo, they are not gonna use the bike lanes we are designing.
We have a space allocated. We don't have an exact number yet, but we'll have a pretty generous space allocated for bicycles.
So like 2 per unit, 3 per unit?
I think standard is more along 1 per unit, realistically.
I mean, if you're giving 2 cars per unit, then we should at least give 2 bike parking per unit.
Yeah. So,
okay, and then just one question, because you are a designer, I'm a designer, like, and just like really asking, like, if you have to do one trend-setting thing in this building, like one really cool trend-setting thing that makes it special to be a downtown Catholic project, because this is like downtown Catholic projects coming before any other project in the precise plan area. What is one coolest thing you would want to do and leave a legacy for the rest of the people to look at and say, hey, we need to do better than this building?
Yeah. All right. Great comments. So addressing first the issue of timing, the project we are moving forward respectfully, and actually rather than saying waiting for a precise plan to be done in a year or 2 or 3, we're saying, why don't we work through the process with you? And that's why we actually already have had community meetings with community leaders and yourselves, and will continue to do so avidly. If anything, maybe we are denied meetings, but we're not for lack of trying. So on our side, we want to have as much openness and much dialogue as humanly possible. So this can be something that sets that benchmark, Atisha, that sets that level of quality. This is such, even at this early stage in this blockout, such a highly detailed building, even like this, even at this early stage, more so than downtown has seen in a long time. And so the idea is going further with this and working with the community hand in hand in lockstep, not waiting for, but rather working with in lockstep all the way through with the city council, with the mayor, with the community leaders, and the various neighbors in the community at large. So we want to basically just gather and be a catalyst of a clearinghouse of information and inputs, and be able to move forward with an outstanding project. And while I totally agree with you that parking standards will probably change, Right now, we have to design to parking standards that are on the books. Legally speaking, we can't present a project that does not comply with parking standards. I, in good conscience, cannot. If those standards change down the road as we're going through design development or construction documents, we can always amend that, in the years, in the next year or so. But for now, we will proceed with, a fully compliant parking, because for the neighbor, the neighbors in the immediate community, one of the greatest concerns will be, where are people going to park? Are they going to park in front of my house? Are they going to be blocking my street parking? Or will they have enough parking on the site? So philosophically, I'm 100% with you, but practically speaking, we need to make sure that we address the concerns of the immediate quad community to say, hey, we are parking this project completely. We're not trying to skimp or cut or create new standards yet until those things really materialize, you see. But excellent input. I would say, let's see if the sidewalk width, I think in really having worked throughout the Bay Area, from San Francisco to Napa to down to Gilroy and Morgan Hill and Monterey and so on, in all these areas, whenever we look at a sidewalk width that's roughly 20 feet, like we are proposing here, and what you have in this image on the top left, that's kind of the gold standard, if you will, anywhere in Northern California for a sidewalk width, where you have plant strips, sidewalks, and dining, outdoor dining space. And that's including any, whether small or large community. So that's why when I proceed forward to address Dan's concern of why not go through analysis, at the end of the day, almost every urban planner, in fact, the urban planner that the city has hired here has designed all those other communities that we've worked with. So I can actually copy and show you how those standards kind of replicate themselves and propagate themselves throughout the Northern California. So realistically, this is kind of the gold standard of sidewalks and community activation. So that's what we're looking for, is setting, as you say, the high standard, the high bar.
So just one more quick question, and I don't know if you're talking about WRT as the urban planner. The city has hired. I used to work for them until September, so a big portion of this project is my design. I was leading urban design on all the survey, and everything you see is on my fingertips still. So, other quick question actually on sidewalk, and this is something, has been a pet peeve of my design process, is we want to make sure that these white sidewalks are well coordinated with fire department, because as a landscape architect and a street designer, I've seen most of the time the trees are the first thing that get omitted to give fire access. And the building across on Franklin is a classic example, the Silicon Sage building, where it's a red curb, and we don't want to make that mistake ever again, ever in our city, anywhere else. I feel so.
100% agree.
And other quick question is, I am personally living in a developer designed townhome in North Santa Clara.
Okay.
And one thing I just miss, and the only reason I want to move out of our home, is we don't have any private open space. It's so claustrophobic. There is no balcony, there is no patio. It is designed to efficiency. And there is no way I could get like 20 minutes of sunlight in wonderful, it's a sunlight desert. If you're talking in California, it's like amazing to imagine, but it is. Our community is so poorly designed that you cannot get 20 minutes of sunlight, and very few homes do get that. So I'm just trying to understand, how will you attract people? Because I know everyone in my age group who would be your customer is looking for places with large balconies or at least some open space.
So the owner has been very clear, the developer has been very clear, and we're very excited about it. He would like to have private outdoor spaces for nearly all of the units. Plus, we have also rooftop terraces, which we had shown on the prior submittal, which we're also incorporating in this one, so that there can really be some fantastic large open spaces where people can just go, even social distancing, and have a little table and a chair where they can hang out, work on their laptop, read a book, relax, sunbathe, whatever, but in the private area up on the terraces, so that you create a livable outdoor space, because you have to have livable spaces. And yes, we want people to come out of the building and go into the community and use the parks and all that stuff. But a lot of times one may not have the time to go out, and it's just really very nice to have that in your own building a little bit, so you can just enjoy some space and a little bit of community as well. Agreed. 100%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Atisha. Next hand that hasn't spoken, I'm going to go to Rob Mayer.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Sal. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Yeah, could you go back to your, your image, your latest rendering?
Of course, the rendering. Sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're, looking at preserving these houses. That's a huge, huge thing, as you know, and so I really appreciate that. In terms of those houses and lifting them up, I'm just going to start from there, and I'm going to work around a little bit. It's really critical for me. I see a lot of houses that are, I would consider lifted too tall, and they're to a point where they feel like they should have just been lifted a whole story. And I'm a big advocate of not having that finished floor greater than half the first floor height, so that it feels like a pony wall construction,
right?
And you don't have a long staircase going up. So could you comment on when you said you were going to lift them? What were you thinking there?
By lifting them, we need to move them up for construction purposes. They are set today in this rendering at the exact same elevation that they are in reality at this moment.
Perfect.
So the intent was basically to sit them back down exactly at the same elevation so that we don't lose any historical context and relationship between the homes and the street and the sidewalk. They'd be identical.
That's great. No, that's what I wanted to hear. So do you have renderings on Homestead and Franklin of this current?
Not yet. We wanted to,
okay.
Before we invest another 60 hours or so, we wanted to sort of get inputs on this and sort of understand if, we believe we're kind of in the direction of what we were told in the various, meetings that we've had. And if we move forward, then we can go to the next step.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about the architecture now. The building that's behind the two historic ones looks fairly tall to me. On the, I guess it'd be the west side of those. So I guess they just feel tall as you wrap that corner. In terms of the deco and kind of talking a little bit about what Atisha said, my original thought was that type of building could be done in a more contemporary way on the corner. And some, the current building right now has a nice a canopy that extends out. And I really think that extending a canopy around the corner and doing a something on the corner, because Franklin is our main street. And I'm a little, Silicon Sage did a similar thing where they did something in the middle of the block. And so I'm very resistant right now to that element. And I think that we could really put a strong kind of interesting thing down our main street. You can even get really cool vertical signage that off of the corner. And I know Dan would hate for me to say this, but some theaters were on the corners and they kind of create this very strong jewel of attraction. And so
I'm laughing a little bit because last time we had the vertical sign on the center building, and my instinct this time was to actually put it on the corner of Franklin and Monroe, because I thought that would be such a cool welcome sign, into the city, because Franklin is, as you say, kind of the main road coming in. But I thought, I'm not going to go die on that hill right now about putting the sign on the corner, but thank you for actually mentioning it.
Well, I think Dan probably had more of an issue that it said Santa Clara, what it said on it. Is that true, Dan? Right? Because you love signage, Dan. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I do. I just think it's very similar to what we're thinking about on the theater side. So, if we're going to have multiple Santa Clara signs, I have no problem with signage at all. In fact, what I'm going to be advocating for is the smaller, about 1930, they had those 2-foot neon signs in a lot of the downtowns in California. that marked, and not overdoing it, not having it on every building, but up and down the street. So you know, and that's what I recall in the original Santa Clara, is that it glowed. You knew where you were because there were signs that stuck out. They were kind of triangular, vertical. So I'd have no problem with that at all. And the neon work that's being done right now is just incredible.
Yeah.
But again, I think, Sal, what you did is you hit exactly the size, color, and it looked exactly like what we want to do on the theater.
Yeah. So thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to make sure that was clarified, Sal. That
I'm a huge fan of vertical blade signs.
Yeah, and Dan and I have talked at length about neon signs and what cool stuff is going on these days. So
yes.
So I do think that, especially because there's currently sort of this deco building on the corner, that it's almost paying homage to that, but you can be done in a contemporary way. Like Atisha said, we certainly don't want it to look like Disneyland. And I don't think your renderings speak of Disneyland to that extent, but I understand the point, and most times it is done like Disneyland. And so in terms of height and massing, it feels big to me. And we can get into dwelling units per acre and all that good stuff. This is on the residential side. Well, it's mixed, but there's more residential on this side of Monroe, obviously, than on the Franklin Square side side. And as I look at right next to the red barn, I'll call it, Butch's old house, I think you could do a strong cornice line and possibly step back some of these buildings along the frontage to give a little bit more pedestrian friendly component. And I'm not, you have a 3-story right next to it that steps to 4, and I appreciate that. I think you might be able to, and you do it on the second building from the corner, although those look like balconies that are cantilevered out as opposed to a recess. So
no, it's not balconies cantilevered out.
It is
on the second building.
No, second from the corner.
Oh, that one. But that's actually, those top 2 floors are set back from the rest of the building.
How much would you say those are set back?
I believe they're about 7 feet.
Okay. Okay.
It's significant. When you're walking on the sidewalk, you can't see those facades.
Got it.
You're set back.
So I might say, and also depending on how big this corner building gets, you might be able to do, I guess I'm seeing it's pretty tall. I mean, compared to Silicon Sage. Silicon Sage is 4 at the corner. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be okay with taller at the corner, like a 6-story, but I think a stronger setback and cornice line, you do have a nice rhythm of buildings. And I think that's the important thing, whether it's modern or vintage looking, that it's all about a rhythm to me, and not having a monolith, right? And I think you're heading in the right direction in that regard. Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly, I like what you're saying about the storefronts. I think we really need to make a bold effort with this streetscape to not just, whether you inset the entries and then put the openable set back. We've talked about this before, to enhance even more, not just the sidewalk, because 19 feet, you're going to eat up 5 feet with the planter strips. You got at least 5 or 6 for the sidewalk, and then you got about 8. Again, it's you could fit 2 tables there, but it's not a bold push. And you could certainly push the ground floor in and set the storefront back and give a little bit more wiggle room for, I'm not saying fine dining, but it would certainly be possible, to have
so
larger.
The retail portion on the ground floor is on the 2 right-hand buildings on the bottom.
Okay.
That's the retail portion.
So it could be really cool is if you do a canopy and then you push back a little bit, you can really have a fun dynamic on that corner.
Correct.
And with great visibility, you know, and so that's what I would push for. So again, if I see that tall deco building move to the corner, maybe it's a little wider, so you can have more height on the corner, but get more units in there possibly, and then you can step down a little bit or do a little more pushback on either side of it. So, and whether 66 units is the right amount for this property, again, I don't want to get into dwelling units per acre because I'm looking at sensitivity to neighbors in this specific spot, because the downtown that's on the other side, we don't have neighbors to deal with, kind of, I'll call it in the inner circle of the downtown, and this is on the fringe. So I think you're headed in the right direction, but again, also what Dan said, I do, look, I appreciate you giving it a go. You know, it's like me going for variances because I believe in it. And so I commend you on that. My personal opinion is, in terms of retail and everything, we want to be smart about what we're doing holistically as a city and where we put the right things in the right places. And I do feel like, you know, maybe waiting to, you know, I'm hoping this precise plan, I think everybody here, we can't wait 2 to 3 years. It's hopefully, in my estimation, 6 months to a year. And given COVID and everything that's going on, I think it might be a wise decision to wait and see, and give an opportunity for holistic angle that again, parking is expensive. And I've heard some places going down to 0.75 parking, which is probably what, half of what you're proposing at what, $30,000 a space. So
but realistically, Rob, though, in every community I've seen on this parking, I mean, philosophically, I get it. Everyone's excited about the reduction of parking, but no one's selling their cars.
Well,
I mean, how many on this panel have sold their cars so far?
Yeah, but
I'd be happy to sell.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm happy to, but not yet.
But look at it this way, you know, we just are going through a time period where almost everybody's working from home right now. And if 50% of the people that are working from home moving forward, you know how many cars that takes off the road? I mean, it's incredible. So that's part of the problem, is we're in such this interesting time right now. And I don't want to leave, like, having all this parking creates more mass, more cost, more everything. And I just, my gut tells me there's so much that in the next 6 months to a year, you know, when we get, you know, what's going to happen? It's worth waiting, in my opinion. So that's just my comments.
Yeah.
Thanks for presenting, Sal.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Rob. All right, it looks like, is there any other DCTF member who has not spoken yet that would like to speak before I start going back through the list? Anybody? Okay, so let's start back up. Patricia?
Just a quick question. I think this is more for Leslie and Rena and all. Like in this one, if they are moving forward and we as a community and everyone wants to allow them to reduce parking ratios, is that like, is this a PD permit, like plan development permit? Could they go for variances? Like what's the tool that we can make this project align with the current agreed work on precise plan, but also not, you know, I understand, like, you know, 4 years is a lot of development cost for a developer. They're already reducing units, conserving the Victorian. So like, what can we do to help them with the process, but also keep it pretty aligned with our vision?
So I don't know what application they actually filed for, but if you want to change any of the standards that are in our zoning code, they would have to file for a plan development rezoning, which basically means you're making up your own zoning district specific to that site. That would be the time that they would be able to request that as a change.
I believe our application is PD.
PD.
Is it PD? Okay.
Okay, so will they have to go through their own CEQA process if
Yes.
they don't wait?
We are going through our own EIR process, yes.
Okay. And if they wait, then do they have to do their own CEQA?
They will still need to do their own CEQA, as the CEQA for the precise plan will not cover project specific. They would be able to tier off of our CEQA, which may make things a little easier for them, but they still have to do their own project specific analysis.
Got it.
And
Is there
just
going to be a neg
clarify,
deck though?
No.
Okay.
Well, we still would have to determine, we would do the CEQA checklist and we would determine, I mean, I know there'll be mitigations. So the term neg deck implies that there aren't any mitigations, but we aren't necessarily saying, is it a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR at this point? We haven't done that work. But I did want to clarify that the process, as Sal stated, they're applying for a PD rezoning. And that process would allow them to ask for reduced parking ratios if that's what they wanted. So it's not an additional process beyond what they're currently doing. It's just, it would be a part of their rezoning request.
Okay, got it. Just another quick question, a comment on the retail. And Sal, there have been a very, a big expert, David Greenfelder, involved in the retail planning for the downtown. And the one thing he has constantly suggested, retail needs more transparency. And if you are proposing retail on the Franklin corner, I would, like, this should look like your image. You were sharing like full glass facade, top to bottom, like, really transparent. And just kind of wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Great point.
Thank you, Tisha. Dan?
Dan, you're muted.
And you're muted, Dan. Tisha, yeah, thanks. Tisha.
Sorry about that, guys. No, I'm good. I'm good.
There you are.
I'm good. No questions.
Okay. Anna?
Thanks, Adam. This question is for Sal, and I know Tisha brought this up last time, and I'm kind of obsessing over it. I just think it's the coolest thing. It's a great way to activate, our downtown. We are at the center of Silicon Valley, so these are students on campus, everyone around here. I mean, they are just living off their phones. So it makes sense that that part of your development is well wired for outdoor events, since your outdoor space is probably going to be the initially best looking outdoor space in our downtown. Are you going to offer like what utilities? I think Atisha had mentioned this, so that if we have events, we could have sound along that block. We could have a little mini jazz trio outside the wine bar. We could have the parade, where I could actually put the stage there and use your electrical utilities for that. Or an art installation that needs special lighting. Are there utilities that are going to be incorporated into your design so that outdoor space there becomes super special and activated? I mean, it'll be something that anyone walking along there will want to take a picture and live stream what they're doing and really promote the downtown. So we need to make it easy for them to do that.
That is such a cool idea. I think that's something that definitely I will discuss with Randy, with the owner, the developer. I think it's phenomenal to have some utility that obviously is privatized and secure, so it just doesn't become, a free-for-all, so to speak. Like that can be used for special events, like the downtown parade and some great things that celebrate the community in Santa Clara and downtown, and see how that can be. This can be sort of a wonderful interface, and then maybe future projects do the same thing. You'll have a downtown that is fully wired, fully accessible, and can amplify sound and create some amazing experience for the visitors. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you, Sal.
You're welcome.
All right, are there any other DCTF members that want to comment, weigh in? All right, looks like I'll comment. So Sal, you're still at 61 units for this development?
Roughly, yes. Yeah.
Two homes.
And that was the trade-off is basically we went, and again, looking at the heights on the samples, as far as you can go to that, the mapping. When we looked at the heights that are being studied for this area, we looked at that and saying, okay, and actually the community at our last community meeting, I think many suggested, make it taller along Monroe and Franklin and shorter NC to preserve the two houses. So that's exactly what we did. We did not go to a 7-story maximum that is suggested in all 3 of the proposals on Franklin. We kept it lower. We kept it at maximum 6, and we stepped back the building in many locations to sort of soften its appearance and verticality along the Monroe edge.
Okay. But 61 units in the new structure, correct?
Correct.
And you said you're going to raise the houses. Are you putting a basement underneath, or?
No. Let's go back to the site plan for a moment. There is no basement underneath it. Well, there's a parking basement underneath the entire level here. There's an underground basement for the residential. Parnas, if we can go to the underground plan.
Mm-hmm.
This is the underground plan underneath that you don't see, below grade.
So you're going to dig the parking structure below, move the houses around, and then set them back down.
And then bring them back to the exact, they'll be surveyed and certified before they get moved. And then when they come back, we do this commonly with historic homes. And then when they come back, the civil engineer shoots them and surveys them and lands them exactly in the same spot and exactly the same elevation, meaning in height, in relationship to the earth. That's how we do back to the exact.
What's your total parking that you have accounted?
Let's see, total parking, we have residential parking, 118 parking spaces for the residential, and then the retail looks to be about 15.
Okay. And then how many of those are tandem? Because I just noticed that on your floor plate for your basement.
There are none that are actually manually tandem. Let's go to the basement plan. The ones that you see here that appear to be tandem, those are mechanical, meaning you park in the front space along the driveway edge, and then it automatically moves your car. They're called puzzle parking.
Puzzle parking?
Yeah, we used them on several projects and they work actually extraordinarily well. Klaus is one of the leading manufacturers of this. It's used pretty extensively in California at this point.
Klaus. Is that
everywhere?
K-L-A-U-S?
K-L-A-U-S, yes.
Okay.
Klaus parking. You can go on their website and you can see like the various types that they use. There's many different sizes and whatnot and functionalities. And you basically just go to your normal parking space every day, the same one, and then it'll move it and park it for you.
And then I noticed you said you didn't have elevations for the other ones because you guys are still working kind of through preliminary comments from,
sure,
and everything else. So I'm assuming that's the same for the floor plates. You don't have all the floor plates, right? You have just kind of a generic.
We have schematic layouts of the floor plans.
For the floor plan.
Next sheet, Carnos. So this is the second floor.
Okay. What's your what is your 1 bedroom, like rooms? So like how many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms are you guys at?
All right. Bedroom counts are 17 1 bedrooms, 43 2 bedrooms.
Okay. And
that's
then,
a preliminary number because we're still refining floor plans and whatnot.
Okay. Do you know your rough average size for each?
Yes, they're like 1170 for 2 bedrooms, and roughly, let's see, the 1 bedrooms around 750, 780 for a 1.
So I'm just trying to get some data to start stewing on it. This is a very different plan than the last one that was presented at the community meeting in December. So
it is
just trying to get my head around it. And then, okay, you answered that. So I guess if you want to go to the elevation drawing.
Sure.
Great. So, I mean, the kind of some of the points that were conveyed earlier, you know, the massing definitely seems, you know, I'm concerned with it overall, just with the two houses. I mean, I love that the two houses are going to remain. I think that's, you know, I can tell you guys heard it loud and clear from the community that, you know, there really wasn't a palette to move those two houses. So, and I do understand that there's a trade-off, right? I mean, now you've lost some potential buildable space.
Correct.
And so I can see how you got to this point. To the earlier point, I think massing towards, you know, architects always, and I work with a lot of architects in commercial, and, you know, it's symmetry always seems to be the go-to, right? Everything equal, half equal, three-quarter equal. And I don't think this project, I mean, this project doesn't, you know, no matter how well you shake it, it's not going to be balanced. And to Rob's point, you know, we've seen what putting the highest portion in the middle at the Gateway, Franklin Gateway project kind of results in. And I think that pushing it out and making it more, you know, the density towards the Franklin Monroe Street, where it is going to be potentially more commercial going down Franklin Street, because they're already zoned that way. You know, it will eventually fill in much nicer. I mean, it will, that corner will be the center of the development, right? It's not your development's the center and then we get a new center on their new development. It's like, you guys have a chance here to really, to be the anchor on that corner.
Right.
And I'd really strive to push that, whatever massing we have to do, out to that Franklin and
the Franklin corner.
Yeah. And I like the you know, Rob's comments about the awning and kind of, you know, a throwback, and that is the Deco building. And then demassing it on the side that's, you know, abruptly against the single family residences on the back. On the back behind Cole and Butch's house, what's that height? Is that 4? It's kind of hard to, is that the intent, 4 stories?
Behind the two Victorians, that's 4 story. It's 3 over podium.
I mean, I think that's, you know, it's challenging because I can't see the complete back, but I mean, I would see, I mean, massing there, I think is, you know, I think we need to be more sensitive to it. And so, you know, you had said earlier that you want to do the parking to the city standards, but as Rena mentioned, you know, because you're going with a PD plan, you know, the world's your oyster. You can ask for anything and the city can shoot it down, obviously. But I think especially with this DCTF, this task force, and kind of the way we're thinking about the future and the timeline of, even if we told you today, you wouldn't be built out for X amount of years. And, you know, that, I think, you know, the parking is high. I mean, I don't know if I'd go extreme the other direction, but I know what that parking allows, right? By reducing the parking, it's going to reduce the massing, and it's also going to reduce the cost, which again can potentially reduce the massing or get other benefits of some of the things that the community has talked about. So I really want to take a hard look at that.
Adam,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry. As you were talking, as Atisha was talking, I was kind of brainstorming, but one thing that might be rather cool if the community is in agreement, if we eliminate these parkings on the top left, if you will, all along that that whole line right there, we can actually potentially drop the 4-story building to a 3-story building, land it on the ground, and then actually have it be like walk-ups, like walk-up townhome kind of style. So that basically it's the Victorian-esque architecture behind the 2 historic buildings gets brought down to the ground. You know, more like a walk-up brownstone or a walk-up residential building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for answers now, Sal, but I'm just throwing out. So, I mean, obviously, your wheels are turning, which is really good, right? I mean, you're getting what we're talking about, and I think you're, you know, I think that's the point, and that's great. You know, I know there's been a lot of talk of like live-in roofs, so I mean, even maybe doing a 2.5, I guess, if you knocked out that parking, right? It would drop the parking floor, maybe even doing like a live-in roof.
Yeah. Well, the really cool thing that it would also do, Adam and Rob, I know this is, you know, up your alley as well, I hope, is that then there wouldn't be parking and or a driveway between us and the residential behind us, because that's our only residential interfaces in this one portion of the property. The other half of the property interfaces with commercial, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to do
Yeah,
that,
I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so yeah, no, what's fun is, as Adam was saying it, I was thinking the same thing. You know, you do a 3-story, but it's really a 2.5.
right?
So you do shed dormers, then you're getting, you know, you have fairly tall 2-story, and the beauty is that you have very high floor lines for the 2 buildings that are there. They're about a half story up, so they're already 2.5 kind of, well, they're, you know, they're about 2 because they're, but yeah, I think that's the right direction, because that 4-story thing felt like you're sliding this knife right between 2-story houses and 1-story houses.
Right.
It just doesn't quite feel right, you know.
Yeah, and if we do it this way, it does 2 things. It reduces the scale and the mass and brings it down literally to a Victorian scale, right? You know, the 2.5-story scale that's all over the neighborhood, all throughout the quad, everywhere.
Yeah.
And it has gardens and walkways around it, no parking and no driveway. So we remove the one driveway that's closer to the residential. We keep the one that goes to the basement only. And then that way the residential is anchored down on the ground, and we have little neighborhood, you know, interface that is authentic, you know, next to the single family homes.
I think it's a great idea, because it will make a better pedestrian experience not to have that drive aisle passing through.
Yeah.
You know, it almost seemed like it was a separate development, even though it's still the same. So it's, you know, it will give it a break, right? A natural, you know, and then you have the houses, and then you have the corner piece, which is really the density piece. So that's I like where your mind's headed there.
Yeah.
One of my challenges, if you want to go back to, or I guess, yeah, why don't we go back to the elevation real quick? Sorry.
Yes.
So one of the other things that I you know, Rob has heard me talk about, and a lot of people have, is, you know, one of the challenges is when you have one architect do a large project like this. I mean, no matter how good the architect is or whatever, they always have their own little things that drives them in design, right? And so I think it's really important to, you know, I think you have a pretty robust team in your office. I would really challenge to have someone else take on a piece of, you know, an individual building, even if it ends up being completely different. Like to Atisha's point, like do a modern building, do an older building, do, you know, a contemporary building. I mean, make them, change them, but also have someone else do some of the detailing. And I know that probably is raising the hairs on the back of your neck, but I always feel I always feel like I can tell the architect like had the hand in it no matter what, you know what I mean? Because they're all, and I do the same thing in design, right? I always have my own little things that I want to be done, and I think that's what ends up making these projects very vanilla and very bland, is that, you know, they're so big and so massive because they take up a whole block, and one person designs it. There's no diversity, there's no break. So I mean, I think you're headed down the right path. I mean, I like how you've already have it kind of laid out here, in the sense of, you know, some diversion from the adjacent buildings, or trying to make it look, but I would just challenge to let someone run with it that would put in different detailing and different little, you know, their finishing touches on it. And then you know, personally, I'm a huge advocate for, you know, rooftop amenities, but I absolutely condemn and the reason being is because I always just find them to be the apartment shed. I find bicycles, toys, you know, all the leftovers that they don't want to put in their apartment. I always, you know, as I'm driving down El Camino, or, you know, other streets that they have a lot of balconies, I just find the leftovers from the apartment, which is.
So Adam, how that's in modern buildings, how that's managed is that there's the CC&Rs, the covenants and restrictions on the property, where you are not allowed to store bicycles or use balconies for storage. On older properties, yeah, there are no rules that pertain to that, and you get it all, if you will. But on modern buildings, there's specific restrictions that you just can't do that. And that's the intent here, is we don't want to have it be, you know, a junkyard on a balcony.
Yeah, I mean, you get what I'm saying. I mean, but I've seen it on some new ones, and maybe they didn't put in a robust. enough CC&R for the
I would
project,
imagine.
or maybe they're not, you know, holding their tenants accountable. I don't know. What I've seen, and it's just something I don't want to clutter our downtown. I mean, I'm absolutely, so one of the things that I'm for is making, you know, bipartisan doors that open and they still have, you know, it's not a balcony, you can't walk out onto it, but you can get fresh air, because I still believe that, you know, an apartment, somebody who's living in a condo in an apartment still needs to have that exposure to the outside, especially now with COVID. I mean, I couldn't imagine living in an apartment without having more than.
If I may, Adam, to not get too refined in the weeds, if you will, but to Atisha's point, I think it's absolutely critical to have outdoor living space for people. We have to be humane in our approach. We have to make our properties livable to where there's a true sense of an indoor-outdoor. We keep on forgetting that we're organic creatures, we're human beings and made to live outdoors and indoor for shelter, but really we're made to live for outdoor exposure and experience. And many people forget that, architects forget that when they're designing. They think as if the home is within four walls. No, it belongs to nature as well. And the more that we can bring the outdoors in through large fenestration and bring the indoors out by outdoor living spaces, the more we're going to have happy and well-balanced living arrangements, if you will. So I agree with you. I think the CC&Rs need to be fully strong and restrictive on the issue that they can't be junkyards. But I, for one, believe that they're really an essential part of the living experience.
Yeah, I think roof decks, you know, a terrace, multi-terrace roof deck would be more, you know, fitting. I don't see a ton of people sitting out on those little balconies and using them.
Adam, actually, the counterpoint is those balconies are not designed for people to sit, because they're either so small or they're designed with these like really thick railings that they are not places that people want to sit. So they end up becoming storage spaces.
Yeah.
If you see any balcony which is well designed, you will see it being used, then becoming a source storage spaces. You know, more if you drive around like Milpitas, like there is not a single balcony you would want to stand yourself in any of the townhomes or the multifamily that has been put together in around the BART stations. It's surprising. And, you know, I have lived into it and I'm living in one of these places. Like I have a 10 feet by 10 feet patio with an 8-foot high wooden solid, like fence around it. Who's going to use it? I'm never going to use it. I don't get like 10 minutes of sunlight in it. And it's my junkyard. Like, honestly, anything we don't have bike storage in our townhome, bikes go there. We don't have any storage for our camping stuff, any storage for any gardening stuff. Everything gets dumped there because I don't want to use it.
But isn't that the point, that these are very small balconies? So in terms of usability, I'm not sure they are that usable, right? They'd have to be at least 10 feet deep, I think, for someone to put a decent sized table on and to hang out and have dinner or something. So
yeah, it has to be designed well.
And that's where I was kind of going. I mean, Sally, in your last kind of the proposal that you had during the community meeting, you had a rooftop terrace on the front and the back. One was actually for public and one was for private.
Right.
I mean, I just, that's kind of where I'm leaning. I absolutely agree that we are organic creatures and we want to be outside and we want to see other people and stuff. And so that's why I think having a balcony, not a balcony, I'm sorry, a rooftop terrace on the Monroe side would be appropriate. And then, you know, that's accessible, not again to the public, but to your private residents. To eliminate the balconies, I think would be something. These are just comments. I mean, take them for whatever they're worth. I know there's 1,000 things you have to juggle. So, you know, you never can make all of them happen, but I love the outdoor space on the terraces. I just am not a huge fan of the balconies. And then I kind of lost track of my thoughts because we kind of got off on a rail there. My other thing would be, I guess, you know, you guys, you've talked about having it owner occupied, you know, for sale units versus rentals. I know the market is, you know, nobody really knows, has a crystal ball or anything. I mean, obviously, I think from the community and you know, there is definitely more of an interest in the for sale housing versus the apartment housing, just because there has been so many apartments, and I think there's a lot of people who are looking for an opportunity to, purchase a smaller unit at a more affordable rate based on just being that it's a smaller unit than like a single family house on its own parcel. So it'd be something to consider. I know, again, take it for whatever it's worth, but and then the last thing I think I have right now is, the retail space. If you want to go to the retail, you had 2,800 square feet, I think.
Yes.
Is what you're down to. Do you know what the depth is roughly from not the part that has the jog, but is it?
I want to say approximately 35 or so feet, something like that.
Or so. I mean, I am concerned about the shape, and I know you were saying that you could have partitions put in to chop it up. I mean, based on the presentation we had, it almost seems like a lifetime ago, about a year and a half ago, from a retail expert. They were talking about it, having smaller retail spaces, including, everything I'm reading about COVID. It's just easier to manage. But if you make a smaller space, I know you said in the community meeting that you would put in grease traps and grease ducts. Is that still something you guys have planned in this plan, or is that gone away?
No, as far as I know, we're still looking to do that. And remember, the 2,800 square feet can be divided up into any small increment as well.
Yeah.
500 square foot, whatever is needed.
And then you're gonna size your infrastructure to be able to support multiple food venues, or, I mean, that's going to be your challenge, right?
Yeah. I mean, the grease trap, even just putting a standard grease trap, it'll be plenty large to accommodate the square footage.
One thing that I think would be interesting, because I'm really nervous about having another downtown gateway, where we just have a bunch of empty storefronts, and there's a multitude of reasons why that is, and we don't need to get into them. But one of the things that I think would be really beneficial, and it kind of came up when you were talking about your bike spaces being only one per unit. What if you made part of your retail space not only partially bike storage for your own tenants, but also for the future micro mobility of being able to drop off, scooters and rideshare bikes and those kind of things, and make it an actual storefront? And so that way it's accessible to the public. It has another door that, is secure, that goes into your tenant's bike storage. But that way, those items have a place to live. It's not a dead piece of retail. So hopefully it will spark other, retail venues, as well as allowing people to come in and out of the downtown, because they have a place to drop off and a place to pick up and charge. That would be something I think it could really be a catalyst to help, drive that kind of alternate mobility to the downtown, and, fill a store and make it lively. And that's all I believe I have right now.
I have a couple other comments if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just as I'm sitting there, I just have 3 other comments. The one mistake I think Silicon Sage made was on Franklin Street. They didn't wrap the retail on Franklin, so it's really kind of almost a rear end of the building. And again, Franklin is our main street. And as I look at this plan, you have a little bit looking around the corner, but maybe there's an opportunity to really strengthen as it wraps a little bit on that corner. And maybe it goes up to the drive aisle. I don't know what you're going to do with the other things, but really strengthening that corner. So on both streets. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is the building that you had next to the historic houses. You might consider, I noticed that you did a lot of detailing in brick behind, and that's less believable in terms of a historic building. I'd rather see something that's a little bit more wood-sided, Victorian, something that relates to those buildings a little bit better. And then you can step it back and do something modern, as if it was an old facade that was then built back and up, right? So, because you have a lot of detailing in the background on that building. So it might be a better transition from these wood-framed, wood-sided houses, because our old downtown was, it was a lot of wood buildings. So it's just something that caught my eye. And then the last thing was reveals on windows. And it's something I can't emphasize enough with the failure in architecture today is that, you know, and I'm not specifically saying you, but a lot of architects use tricks to try to fake that the building is thicker than it really is. And when we talk about old buildings and old or downtowns or buildings in general, they're larger structures and they should have some sense of mass to them. And where that fails is that a lot of people have stucco right up to the window. And even if they put a stucco mold around it, it's lacking the depth that a masonry building would have. So when you're doing larger format buildings, I think it's super important to have those reveals to the window to strengthen that building facade, because otherwise it feels paper thin. So those are just, I mean, we can talk offline more. I'm sure I'll have more comments. As Adam said, it's, you know, it's the first time we're looking at this after, this is the third iteration, you know, in a I would consider a fairly short time. So, you know, we can chat. I know you tried to reach me, but I've been slammed. So we can do that again. Thank you.
Welcome.
And Sal, if I could, Sal, I'll have additional comments too, but I concur with what Rob said, is that a lot of failures in trying to achieve a, you know, an architectural, you know, like a deco building or a mission style building, is those windows are flush with the buildings and they just look like, you know, it looks bad.
Yeah.
I think I see some reveals there in the deco building.
Correct.
Which I appreciate, but the flush windows are, it's just Sunnyvale to me.
We generally don't do flush windows anywhere for the most part. And especially when we worked on the Los Gatos Opera House on Main Street in Los Gatos, we made sure that even that one was also done in brick, but we made sure there was depth and detail that replicated quite precisely what it was in 1906. So,
and I love the building.
Comments are well stated and understood.
Okay, Letitia?
And these are just quick comments for consideration. Like, I would like to see some amenities which are like shared for downtown. Like, these are not, as much as these are individual projects, we are trying to build downtown block by block. Is there a public restroom? You know, like, is the parking for retail shared? Is it like, it should not say reserved only for this building, you know, like, because we are trying to decouple a lot of these uses. We are not thinking, from our perspective, we are not thinking of this like project by project. We are thinking of a complete downtown that people can use, and they don't care which building, you know, which shop they're going into, like who's the developer is. So like, kind of like thinking of like how this building can really fit into the overall downtown. And also, as I said, become the trendsetter of saying, if you're coming into Santa Clara downtown, these are the minimums you have to give to, you know, have a successful project. Like outdoor bike racks. I know this landscape is still like being matured, but like, you know, bike racks and I don't know, all the amenities that we want to see in downtown, like lights at night, there's no pedestrian level lighting. So things like those, so like really getting into that grain. And I feel when I'm in these places, all I care about is the first 20 feet in vertical height. And then with the trees come, no one notice what's happening above. So I would really like to focus on that public realm aspect.
Somewhat true, yeah.
And make it like really high quality, both in terms of public amenities you're providing, plus the materiality and design.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the public bike racks, you know, out on the, you know, the sidewalks and so on, I think are fantastic. If you guys are on board, then we should work with the city to allow those types of amenities, because sometimes Public Works would not allow that, depending on, you know, various communities. So I think that's something that we collectively need to go in for and negotiate.
I'm happy to put in a word to get that good. There will be all of those recommendations as part of the precise plan. So, you know, if things need to happen sooner, we are happy to support that. Another thing is like, I would really like to see how this retail is supporting local businesses by design. which is again about the size and scale that Adam is saying. Like, we are not looking for an Orange Theory or a Starbucks, but we are really, affordability in housing has been talked so much. My pet peeve as a person in this industry is like, we are forgetting affordability in retail, and that's really killing our small businesses.
Yeah.
So
I know that the developer, Randy, is speaking to a lot of local businesses as well, that their leases might be coming up in short order, and would love to have them be part of our building and our project. I mean, as you know, I have been here in Santa Clara for 22 years now. And this is where I work, go to church, and live most of my day. And I want this project to be very special and something that not only I, but we can be proud of.
thank you.
Welcome.
What kind of, so on the first floor, you had a community room on the first floor. What is the intent? Is that like the gym, like little conference area and stuff?
Yeah, that is an amenity for the building, basically a community room, gathering space, watch games, recreate, come together as a community. And we thought it was a nice way to also activate the space. And it's a quiet space, since it's not a retail use, if you will. It's a great space to have adjacent to the Victorians, because it's more of a meet and greet and come together space. So we thought it was appropriate to locate it there.
I have a question for Leslie. If there's no other DCTF comments, just your hand still up. Thanks. My question is, Leslie, what is the, I mean, I know we're supposed to provide recommendation. Is there a formal recommendation and a process for providing that from the DCTF?
So what you can do is, Adam, you as the chair, if you want to write a letter on this project that would go to the decision makers, and then you can bring that letter back for discussion for the DCTF. That's probably the best way to get your comments through. There's nothing, if there's something in particular you want to vote on right now, you're also welcome to do that. But I would say, putting together a letter with all these comments, and I'm happy to help you with that, and then bringing that forward at the next DCTF meeting to vote on sending that letter to the council or presenting it to the council.
Okay, do that. Is there a motion? Is that agreeable with all the DCTF members to go that route? If we, any comments you have, you can send to myself and Leslie over the next week, and then Leslie and I'll get together, we'll assemble it, and then we'll bring it back for review and approval to then send off at the next meeting. I think someone's trying to talk, but I don't know.
Are you looking for a motion?
I'm just looking for a general, and then somebody can make a motion. Discussion first, I guess. Just if that's what everybody feels comfortable with, or if there's an alternative.
I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea too.
Okay. So can I get is there a motion to formulate a letter to present to the DCTF for approval at the next DCTF meeting to provide to planning and council?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor. Oh, actually, I guess we have to take, do we need to take public comment now, or do we take it after this, Leslie? Sorry.
Actually, we should take, let's take public comment before the vote.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we go to public comment. First hand is Jade Dias.
You should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question and then a couple of comments or requests. The first one would be for Sal, And do you have any kind of rendering of the back side of this building facing the other residencies on the block?
No, we do not as of yet. We're looking at scale and massing is the primary objective. And then once that is commented upon, then we would move to that next step.
Okay, so the next is really a request again for the for Sal. I really want to see you stay away from balconies on the back side of the building. I also really am not interested in seeing rooftops facing those residencies and looking into their yards. One of the comments that you made was that the house directly next to it was completely built out, but that is not a true statement. There is a yard on the side, and that side is right on the side you're building on. So I'm very concerned about the privacy of my garden.
This is the area, right, the house right there?
Yes.
Okay. And that yard right there you're referring to, the side yard?
No, beyond that.
Above it, right there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How I don't know because I can't scale it. How wide is that? About 7 or 8 feet, maybe?
No, I think it's more than that. My husband's on the chat, so you might be able to get the answer from him.
Okay.
I think it's at least 15 feet. Oh, wait, he just sent me a text. He says 16 to 20 feet from the house.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it didn't look like that from the overhead at all, but okay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Next public comment, Janet Stevenson.
Janet, you can go ahead and unmute and speak.
Great. First, I want to say, Sal, thank you very, very much for keeping the 2 historical homes in place. That means a lot to our neighborhood. So I really appreciate that you heard us and that you are keeping those homes. So I'm grateful. And I just want to kind of just reinforce a lot of the comments that have already been made, but I agree that the building that is being built right behind the Victorians, that would be much better if it was a lower height. So because it is right where the neighborhood is, and that would be much better for the neighbors that live right there. And also I think it will look better because it seems a little too tall, you know, and behind the Victorians. And I also agree that the corner of Franklin and Monroe should be the focus. That should be like the tallest part and the focus. And you can kind of have a lot of fun with that. Yeah. And so that would be great. And then, and I love the fact that you're making the architecture in terms of making it each building look a little bit different, and you know you're going in the right direction with that, and putting in any kind of vintage features is great. This is a special neighborhood, and so and you know, so anything you can do to complement this neighborhood is wonderful. So just I wanted to make those comments, but thank you most of all, thank you so much for keeping the houses in place.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Janet.
And I just want to mention, when I'm looking down, it's not that I'm ignoring what's being said. I'm actually taking notes. So I apologize if that looks like I'm not focusing forward.
I'm doing the same. I'm doing the same thing. So. Next speaker, DW. Oh wait. Yeah, DW.
Doesn't have its hand up.
They did.
Okay.
They might have just lowered it. It says talking permitted.
Hello. Do you mean me, or is there somebody else you're asking for?
Well, there was DW, but go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead and go first.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Evans. I'm the president of the Old Quad Residents Association. The first thing I wanted to say is thank you, Sal, for listening to the community. Preserving those historic homes is really important to everybody, and I'm glad that you've added that to your plan. I think you've made a lot of progress from the first community meeting. I did want to echo some of the various comments again, just to reinforce them. Atisha brought up a good comment about open retail, making it really visible. I know the current drawing there, you have kind of a closed off retail, and retail really wants to see a lot of glass and openings and stuff to make it really visible. And so I think you really have a good opportunity to do something really iconic on that corner. I mean, you can think of buildings like in New York, like the Flatiron Building, or all these other iconic corner buildings. This is your chance to like make that like the feature of the downtown. So I think you should really think about how you can open that up. I know I've personally seen buildings in like the Pearl District and like Portland that have done a great job of using glass and brick and old and new, and making kind of a modern mix that fits, because I think that's important. Because if you look at architectural design for historical concepts, you really want to figure out how you can either be matching, compatible, or contrasting, and that's kind of what how the Secretary of Interior really encourages people to incorporate historical things into it. So figure out a way to do something that's either contrasting to the Victorians or matches it or complements it. I will hesitate to say matching is maybe the right answer here, just because these buildings are much larger, and large Victorian, we kind of have these single family home Victorians, and I don't know that you really want to build a stretched out Victorian or a big Victorian behind it. That might start looking like a San Francisco Victorian, right? But that's not Santa Clara, right? That's San Francisco.
But I think like Rob had suggested, if we take the 3-story part and set back that 1 story next to the Victorians and use that as a wood-clad Victorian-esque kind of feature, that would be the right scale for.
I think that scale sounds great. I'm gonna just say maybe you don't want to necessarily even have to make it look Victorian. I mean, it could just be, it could be contrasting, right? Make it different, right? That's a really important way to do like historical, design and infill type design around historic properties and preserving them. So I think you should have that in your toolbox. You don't think you have to like make it look the same or whatever. And then I also was concerned about the sidewalks and street trees. I mean, it was mentioned by Atisha, we should really make sure that as part of the precise plan, we're making sure we create a really walkable front, that we have trees, we create big sidewalks. I think that was something that we were going to hopefully address with this precise plan. It sounds like you're moving ahead before it. So, if there are things we need to do to ensure that, we should try to make sure that we can, get that figured out ahead of time so that, your project can fit in with,
and I think it's critical in this letter that's going to be formulated to please emphasize that you want street trees, that you want, the pedestrian walkways, the tables, kind of like what we show in that image, whatever it is that you wish to articulate, of course. And emphasize that you want the public bicycle racks out in the public right of way. Those kind of things are sometimes challenging in departments of public works to get them to kind of buy off on them. So if it comes with a strong letter of recommendation from you guys, that's a huge influencer, you know what I mean? And we can kind of work this together from both sides, if you will.
Okay. And then I also thought Atisha's comment about affordability retail is something that's also true and often forgotten. I've heard from a lot of, I occasionally hear from small businesses and stuff that, we were doing well and then our rents got raised, or, somebody redeveloped and I lost my old place. So that's something just keep in mind, how can we provide that? I understand that, retail is challenging and there's a cost of construction, but, retail is sensitive to cost too. And kind of for the whole community, I did want to give a suggestion. Like the Prometheus project at the corner of Benton and El Camino has come quite a bit along in construction, and that's actually at this point probably a good place to go to get an idea for massing, because I think that's 6 stories by El Camino down to I think 3 as you get closer to the residential areas, and they also have some homes they kept in the area, and so you might want to go take a look and walk, and that might give a sense for how the massing of this project would fit on that corner, because that might be a good example. Though, if you have setbacks and stuff, I'm sure it's a little different, but I just wanted to throw that out there so everybody could get a sense for what it is you're building. But overall, I think you made a lot of improvements from the community meeting. Certainly, I like that you've broken the building up so that it's not just one monolithic style. You found a way to kind of create a more active block. So it's all general improvements from what was originally presented.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Cool. I look forward to seeing more detailed renderings and making sure that we also keep concerns about, I know, some of the residents who live adjacent to this in mind as you move forward in your design. So thanks.
And actually, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I would love to come and meet with some of the next door neighbors as well. So hopefully if you're open to it, I would love to come and meet with you and better articulate and get your concerns on a one-on-one basis and kind of get this project tailored to where you understand it very well and we understand very well where you're coming from. And that's hard to do sometimes in a public meeting with limited time, but I would love to have that opportunity of direct encounter.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Next hand, I see Mary Grizzle. Leslie, you still have DW available to talk. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, Mary.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, I can. Hi.
I just want to congratulate you, Sal and Randy, both for stepping up to the plate and setting an example of how to work with the community to get a project that is beautiful for all and that will fit in with our beautiful downtown. And I like the fact that you had the guts to come to the meeting, to the task force meeting, and knowing that there would be a lot of people that might go against you. And I really appreciate your honesty. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. But I also want to say that a lot of excellent community leaders like Rob and Adam and Jonathan and many others, including yourself, have been really gracious with your time in working with me and giving me some great advice. I think it was Rob who said when we went back to the drawing board after the last community meeting, he said, when we are challenged, we end up doing our best work. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish here. I'm not saying that this is my best work. I'm saying we're going to work towards it and kind of refine it and keep on working it until it becomes something beautiful. We want it to be what Atisha mentioned, and that is something that we can all be very proud of and kind of set the benchmark. I think I've actually used those words in prior meetings. So that's where we want to get. And that's what we believe very strongly. And Randy, I know the owner does, that this is an opportunity for everybody to kind of come in and make it something great.
Thank you, Mary. Next is Lucy Haro.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can.
Yes.
Thank you. So Sal, first of all, thank you so much for revising these plans and for keeping the historical homes intact. I do have a couple of questions, concerns. I think with keeping the historical homes, I'm not thrilled with the structure being even taller and adding an additional story. So I think it's just a little invasive for the neighborhood. I'm also concerned about this being an apartment complex and not owner occupied. I would prefer it being owner occupied, similar to Downtown Gateway. Also for the Downtown Gateway project, they do not have balconies on the rear side. So I would prefer this building kind of mirror that as well. So I put a lot of comments and questions into the chat. So let me see here. Also, there was a comment made about having music and so forth and speakers with this building as an adjacent neighbor. I'm completely against that. If you want music and concerts, build that over at Franklin Square, but do not build that here in the neighborhood. I think that's all I have right now. I would love the opportunity to meet with you and Randy at some point in time.
I would love that, Lucy.
Community outreach effort between us and the residents to make sure that we're aligned and we're both comfortable with what's being built.
Absolutely. And I totally respect your thoughts, and what our goal is
The reason that there is the higher proportion here is to pull it away from, frankly, your property and the backside of the property. And this mass that you see here on the right-hand side interfaces predominantly with the commercial property behind us. And as we get to your property, the residential one, it steps down significantly as we've shown here. And now what we talked about today is bringing it down an additional story, or more than additional story, because by removing the podium on the backside of these Victorians, the podium's 15 feet tall, because that's kind of the rule of thumb for retail. It's about a 15-foot, floor to floor level. So that's going to reduce the volume back behind your property significantly. That's like 1.5 stories less in residential terms, right? Because residential is 8-foot plate heights. So it's almost like 1.5 stories less facing the back. So we'll continue to refine the project, Lucy, and respond to your comments as I hope the committee can see in good faith. We have, and thanks be to God, we have a wonderful client that we're working with, Randy Lamb and Partners, that hears what you all say and what I give as input as well, and says, yeah, let's do it. So having that in our partnership is fantastic.
Quick question, Sal, because I've heard quite a few people talk about the privacy for the back, and I know you don't have a back rendering, but this came up for the Downtown Gateway project as some kind of screening. Originally, they were going to plant, I believe, Italian cypresses or something, and then the bioswale got screwed up in the design, and they ended up not being able to plant the trees, and it ended up being, that they ended up planting bamboo, which is now there. What do you guys have planned for that back to be able to shield, give some privacy from, even if you don't put balconies, you're still obviously going to have windows on that side, and there will be a line of sight. How do you guys intend to address that?
The screening in the rear, I think we're kind of open to suggestions, and we can work with Lucy and planning staff and the community and the quad community, and kind of look at what's a good planting material back there, whether the Italian cypress is the right answer or some other type of material. There's some English hedges that work out really well, are fast growing and create a more lacier work than Italian cypress does, where it's more of just a green wall. But if Lucy and others prefer the green wall, then we'll work with it. So
I'll leave it to the neighbors. Just put it. I'll write that down as one of the items. But I'm just hearing that kind of repetitive, concern. So
yeah,
okay,
no, it's a good concern, and basically our pledges will work with the neighbors and yourselves and figure out what works best.
Okay, thanks.
And the fact that now we're going to potentially remove the podium on that back area completely, where it interfaces with the residential, gives us a greater opportunity for the greenery there.
It's funny how much parking drives the whole project, huh? Patricia.
Hello, I'm back. I'm gonna put on a different hat. So I'm gonna put on my HLC commission hat, and I'm actually speaking on myself this time. So I have about 4 or 5 questions. I can take replies at the end. So for the first question is actually about zoning, and this may be more of a Leslie Arena question. So if we're looking at PD for the entire site, what happens to kind of like the HT zoning that we currently have on the property on the corner? Because my understanding is with HT, that carries extra protection for that particular property. So I just don't know how that interacts with the changing of the zoning. So, and then, obviously we're also talking about like lifting the houses and doing like all the changes in the basement, like we're doing the podium under it and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's like any other things that needs to be done with the houses to make it compliant with like current, like with whatever zoning that we end up to be, that may interfere with like the way those buildings are built. Like, can we apply historic building codes on them as we go? And then about the styling around the buildings, because with the buildings around, like what I usually care about, like with a historic house, is that we want things that affects that particular property to be complementary and or highlighting like that specific building. So like I don't necessarily think that the Victorian style, like on the building on the side, it's complementary. Like it doesn't mean complementary doesn't mean copying a style. So what you want to do maybe is to contrast and highlight the buildings in question. Let's see. And then, another thing about like being on the podium is that currently the houses, particularly the one in the corner, has a really nice green space around it with like a fence. I don't know if you can still do turf around that house once you've lifted it, done the stuff to underneath and put it back. Because I would love to see that little green corner still, like after that's done. And then I was thinking about setbacks. How much room are we giving the houses between, particularly the red house and like the big building? Like, the elevation that we're looking at right now looks like a really, really short distance. So it looks a little imposing on that house. So I think I would like to see a little bit more air between those two buildings. And then the setback on Monroe, I'm actually kind of curious, like, I don't remember what the width is on the sidewalk on the Sage building, because it would be really nice as we're going, like walking down the street, that you have the same street width, like at least like the pedestrian side anyway. So like, if you have outdoor seating or whatever, kind of like set further even back, but having kind of like the same width for pedestrian usage would be nice. So. And then parking. So because we were talking about like maybe like reducing a number of parking spaces, like are we thinking about bundling the parking with the units, or like can they be unbundled? Like, so, it would be kind of like a dealer's choice, like, you can rent or buy the unit and then have the parking as a choice. So maybe we don't have to have as many parking spaces needed for the thing. And as you heard earlier, I'm a huge advocate for public transportation, so that's kind of important too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. All right, next is Bob O'Keefe.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Adam. Hi, Sal.
Hi,
a couple questions, and then I got a comment after. On the two houses, thank you very much. You really, you and Mr. Lamb really listened to the community, and this went a long way. I am thrilled that they're going to be staying there. You mentioned you're going to raise them. Did I hear you're going to actually like move them off and then bring them back, or are you just going to raise them and do the underground work while they're there?
That technicality will work out offsite. That's not something I can give you all the logistics on now, but I assure you, we've moved many houses ourselves. Myself, as a firm, have moved many historic Victorians. We're working on a couple right now, and we get them braced. We use a phenomenal house mover. We get them all braced up. They're secure, they're safe and guaranteed. And actually, these homes, structurally speaking, are in excellent condition. We've worked on some. I don't even know if you're familiar with board and batten houses, but we did in Saratoga recently a house that had no wood studs in it at all. It was just 1x12 boards and 2x4 battens. That was the whole structure. It was crazy from the 1860s. So these structures have huge integrity. These are, I know, sensitive, but relatively easy to move.
Great. On the last community meeting, it was brought up that one of the houses was going to be moved over to Lafayette, and the other one was going to be moved over to here on Alviso Street. So I take it at least the Alviso Street is off the table for now under these.
Correct.
Fantastic.
But neither house would be moved under this current proposal.
Okay,
both
fantastic.
would remain in their original locations, same elevation, same spot.
And I love the Art Deco that you added to this. I think lowering that back section behind the houses to 2.5 or 3 stories is fantastic. And that got done in just about an hour and a half to 2 hours of this community meeting here. So we can see what that looks like. The other thing is that corner on Franklin and Monroe.
Yes.
I think that would be cool if something really did happen on that corner. And you mentioned signage, you know, just something, because that is the main draw corner right there. I think you guys have a real step up on your retail that you want to put in there. I think you're doing it right by putting the grease traps in. Silicon Sage across the street, you know, went cheap, and look what they have. I think you have a very unique opportunity here to get some really, really good retail, whether it be a restaurant or something in there right now. And as far as timing goes, of course, everybody would love to see this wait for the precise plan. I would like that, but if it can't, I like the way that you're talking to the task force, continuing and commenting that you're going to continue to work with them. And I understand this is just a rendering. Things change and they can only even get better. So please do what you're doing and keep working with the task force, because this task force is the community.
Right.
And I think you got a winner here, and you could really be the part to ignite our downtown. And I hope that happens. So thank you, Sal.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jeff Hudson. I'm gonna go to somebody who hasn't spoken yet.
Hi, thank you, Sal, for listening to the community and keeping those two historical homes in the location. That means a lot. And thank you also for committing to meeting with the nearby neighbors to making sure that their concerns are met. I want to put in my 2 cents and advocate for wide sidewalks to make a walkable community. The sidewalks need to be wide enough so that 2 people can walk together, holding hands, like my wife and I like to do, and the bike racks and the trees. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Mary, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Ken?
Yes.
I'm a little confused, Adam. Are we going to have a time for people to speak at the end of this for the task force? What I would like to know is when the approximate time of when the precise plan is going to be complete, and are we going to have a form-based code? Are you guys going to, is the task force working on getting a form-based code completed for the downtown project?
So right now,
I'm sorry, I'm really tired.
Yeah, no problem, Mary. So tonight we don't have that. It has discussed previously, and it's something that is being ongoing about bringing up as an agenda item for a future discussion. I can't answer that question because it's going to cost, you know, there's a lot of things that are going to have to happen in order to get the approval to do it, but it is something that has been brought up at the DCTF, and it is something that we're going to continue the conversation with. And as a timeline, I believe, Leslie, we're looking at December of this year. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm like going off my memory. I got about 20 schedules in my head. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say December is this one.
Plus some.
Plus some. So probably early in next.
Yeah, early next year.
And we are trying to.
For the precise plan?
Expediting, Mary.
I'm sorry, for the precise plan?
Correct.
When do you propose to go before the council to request the form-based code?
I don't have that answer right now. We still have to discuss it and decide how what we're gonna do. So I think that's gonna be something on the next agenda for the next meeting. I can't guarantee it. It's something that oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is what we should be working on next is is that is the most important thing right now, I feel, to doing the precise plan.
Duly noted. I appreciate it. We'll make sure when I discuss with Dan and Leslie about the next agenda, we'll definitely take that into consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak about this project proposal? Comments, questions? All right. All right, we'll close. Oh, I just saw one hand. I just saw one hand go up real quick.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Joya. I live 1391. I spoke to you earlier. This is for Sal. You mentioned about coming and meeting with us, and both 1391 and 1399, the owners and occupants would really like to talk to you.
Homestead, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Would love that. How about I give you my office phone number and you can contact me and give me your contact information, and I'm happy to do so. May I do that?
Okay, let me put it on my notes. Let me get that up. Hold on. There we go.
Thank you, Joya, for coming back on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so what is your phone number?
My phone number is 408-998-4087.
Okay, I'm also I'm sure Lucy is taking this down too, because I know she will also want to set something up.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I move to close public comment. Move to close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, public comment is closed. So now do we have a motion on direction for providing our comments and suggestions?
In a letter and bringing it back to the next meeting.
Yes, so moved.
Can I make can we have some discussion? Well, I wanted to discuss this briefly, just to make a comment. We haven't seen the other three sides. It concerns me a little bit of not seeing the three sides in the massing. And I don't know, I mean, we've talked a lot. There's been some juggling going on and some things are going to change. I don't know, Sal. I mean, my gut tells me that I want to see the three other elevations, because this is only one side. Before we make a letter of recommendation, I mean, we can obviously quantify our comments or what we said, if that's the.
I have a question. I mean, we're not approving, so I have a question, yes, to Sal. I mean, I heard what you said earlier about not wanting to continue on because now, based on the comments we've given tonight, you're going to move some of these components pretty drastically.
Right. That's right.
I guess, if we provide our comments, to Rob's point, he has, a valid point. And I think there's a lot of concern from the community, especially the residences behind, about the massing on the back. And since there is no elevation and no real, visual representation of that, I guess my question would be, as you go through this process, you're going to get our comments and you're going to make a commitment, hopefully, to, work through these different changes as you go through the process of going to planning and council and still getting the input from the neighbors, listening to the DCTF, still reaching out to the community. Is that correct?
That's right. What we're looking for, Rob and committee, is guidance, right? So put those comments together. It's so important that we document the progress that we're making, right? From our first community meeting till now, is a completely different project. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
You know, massing scale, architecture, preservation of the two homes. So what we're saying is continue to provide this valuable input to us.
You have to promise
Incorporate features that are critically important, like we talked about sidewalks, scale, massing, all these different features that we're commenting on. Already, just as a result of tonight's meeting, we're radically changing the interface with our 3 residential neighbors behind us, right? By lowering 15 feet lower behind. So basically, we're looking for a letter of guidance to move forward, acknowledge progress, if you will, and saying, let's keep on going, because we can't design the entire project and then redesign it each time. Let us kind of work together through the process is what I'm asking for. And we'll bring it back as a next step once we get further along. We have other sites developed after I meet with Lucy and Joya and family. Then we'll have a more meaningful conversation that incorporates their inputs, that is respectful and appropriate.
Is that acceptable, Rob? I know you had the question.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I just want to be clear on what the letter entails. That it's a letter of guidance with the design to continue to move versus like an approval or, you know. Okay.
Yeah, we you know, this body, we don't approve, but what we're trying to do is the letter will represent what we, you know, taking what he's presented us today and shaping it into what we would have tried to build a form-based code potentially around or set the parameters around, right? And I think, you know, and then take that on and then show planning commission, hey, this is the letter, and they're going to get the same letter. So if Sal decides to do nothing, it's going to show that, you know, Sal and Lamb are not, you know, listening. But I think they've already shown that from even the December community meeting that they've definitely, you know, started to hear what the concerns are, and they're starting to address them. So it's great, and it is a challenge.
Adam?
Yeah.
This is Rena. I just wanted to add, you know, for staff, what we were going to do in the near term, because this is an unusual situation where we have a project that's proposing to develop while we have a specific plan, and in this case, I mean a precise plan that's underway. And we understand, you know, that we want to get feedback from council, obviously from the task force on how to proceed with that. So, you know, I might suggest, because it is our staff's plan to go to the council in the next couple of months to actually ask council, how would you like us to proceed? Would you like us to keep processing this application? Is this something that we should be waiting for a certain point in the downtown precise plan? It sounds like I hear a lot of positive comments about wanting to continue this application. I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. It's just what I've been hearing. But I would suggest that at a minimum, maybe the task force at least provide that kind of guidance on whether or not, hey, you know, this is worth something that's worth exploring while this precise plan's continuing, and continuing to process that. Or if the task force, you know, wants to put out a position, you know, we would rather have this paused until we get to a certain point in the precise plan process. I think that would be feedback that would be really relevant in the near term for what we may be asking council to provide us guidance on.
And to be clear,
good point.
This committee has our full commitment to continue to work with you and the community and the neighbors next door to make it a beautiful project. This is not the last time we're speaking by any long shot. And you can see what we're planning on this time.
That's the feeling of yeah. So again, when the DCTF members email Leslie your thoughts and stuff, also take that into consideration and give some direction on what you're feeling on if it's okay to proceed with the continual collaboration and, you know, assessment of the comments, or if you think it should wait, you know, whatever your feelings are. We can wrap that up in the letter. That's a good idea, Rena. Thank you. All right, do I have a motion?
I thought there was a motion on the floor.
There was.
Oh, there was. Sorry. So do I have a second?
But I want to ask Leslie to repeat that motion.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it was clear to everyone.
Okay.
So the motion would be to write a letter transmitting the comments of the DCTF thus far on the 906 Monroe Street project, And we would be bringing that draft letter to the next task force meeting for your approval prior to sending.
Okay, Leslie, one point of clarification. Is that a combined letter, or that's what I'm assuming? I'm just
It would
tired
be
here.
a letter from the DCTF. So
Okay, got it. Great.
I'll help combine all of your comments into one letter.
Okay. Thank you.
Has this been scheduled for planning yet?
I don't think so. Rena, there's not a hearing date scheduled for this, is there? Not that I'm aware of.
No, we still have a fair amount of work related to, you know, moving the application forward, like CEQA, all of that still needs to be done. We were anticipating in early March going to City Council to get that read that I was describing about whether or not to proceed with processing this application, or if the council wanted to provide us other guidance to pause it while the precise plan got developed. So that's why I suggested that feedback would be helpful.
That's the early clearance, right?
We actually don't have
We don't do that
an
anymore.
early, yeah, the council
The story
last
keeps on going
year.
back and forth on this.
Yeah,
I'm
the
really
last,
confused. May I interject for a
last
moment?
year, at the very end of the last year, the city council officially stopped doing an early consideration process. This application was filed last year though, and really whether it's part of the early consideration process or not, the real unique part of this is similar to what happened with El Camino Real. We had projects that were on file while we started a specific plan process. And so we just want feedback from the council to tell us, as we're undergoing this larger planning process, how do you want to proceed with these individual applications as they move forward?
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. So just,
And I want to interject for a moment because I want to be clear on, you know, proper protocols and process is, Rena, in our communications before this, the gatekeeper process no longer exists. We can't retroactively be responsible for a rule that no longer exists. So let's be really clear on this. The way that planning staff has conveyed this to us after the gatekeeper was eliminated in December is that it's going to council for council's input, just like we're going to the various committees for input. It is not for sidelining it and everything else. It's for input on direction and so on. So
but the specific reason why is because of this project's existence in an ongoing precise plan. So it's really about this project's location as part of a larger planning effort. If we had had an early consideration process, that would have been folded in. But now that we don't have a process like that, we still want feedback because we have competing interests that the city council has on how to move applications forward in this area. So we would like them to provide us that guidance.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor.
okay. All in favor of providing comments, assembling, writing the letter, coming back at the next DCTF to review and approve, and then submitting on, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it. You'll get a letter. Sal, thank you for your time. I know that was a lot longer than I think all of us intended.
But very productive, so that's good.
We still have more items, but you're free.
I am a free man. Thank you.
Have a good day. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Before we move on, Leslie, I know we have two more items, but I know, it's a work night for a lot of people. So if we need to continue an item, is that a possibility?
Yes, it is.
Can we have a quick discussion if we want what the DCTF wants to do about the remaining two items? If we want, just real brief. Do we want to continue on with both? Do we want to continue on with one, or do we want to continue on with none? I know it's 10 o'clock, and I'm trying. We've been trying to keep it down to 4 hours or less, which it's not going to be successful tonight. And I think we're going to start losing production anyway. I guess I'd ask Atisha what her timeline. How long would you think the discussion for Franklin Forward would be? I don't think we have enough time to get in, or the capacity to get into more of the concept board?
So I think I was planning Franklin Forward is more of an FYI session. So like a quick presentation, 5 minutes. And I am hoping, I mean, it's outside of precise, like, this committee's jurisdiction or what we are set to do, but it's within the boundary, what I'm proposing. So I just want, it's more of an FYI session, and I'm happy not to receive comments. And I don't know, Leslie, if it's okay for people to email me comments directly or anything they have added. So I'm really not looking forward for a big discussion, but just
Yeah,
go ahead.
The only thing would be is if the DCTF wanted to take any sort of position on your project.
Okay. Yeah, I do have a slide which is suggesting what kind of support or participation I'm looking from DCTF, but pretty simple.
Go ahead, Butch.
Do we have to take public comment on it at that point?
Yes.
Is it possible to put a motion on the table to move these 2 items to the next meeting for discussion?
Yes,
I would like to move to, I think Adam's right. Like, I think we're all cognitively, I think we're all sort of stretched out, and I don't think the conversations will be very productive moving forward. So I motion to table these items and move them to the next meeting.
And I'd second that.
Okay, so that will be for item 4 and item 5 on the agenda.
Okay, all in favor of tabling the motion, item 4 and item 5 on the agenda to next meeting, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it. So we'll table the 2 items.
Is it possible for me to just reach out to Manuel, because I'm looking to understand some legal aspects of, lease and land ownership, which is just really keeping us from like marching ahead. So is that just something I can do independently?
Yeah, of course. I think anyone can always contact me with any questions, and I won't be the ultimate person, but I can sure coordinate for you and get you in contact with the right people. So if you just want to send me an email, probably be the best way, and then we can get you the info you want.
Thank you.
All right.
Adam,
See,
can I ask
Sal thought he got out early, but we all got out early. All right. Well, we don't need to take any more public comment. So there's no other.
We do need to do public presentations for anything that's not on the agenda.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Chair? I understand that Atisha asked to have an item put on the agenda. Is there a formal process for that, or do we just communicate with you and Leslie, or should we talk about it here, or?
Communicate with myself and Dan, and then we'll discuss it with Leslie and put it on the agenda.
Okay, great.
Put it in. Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
We'll get that first up. Yep.
Go ahead.
No, I'm looking forward to Atisha's presentation, so we'll get that done.
All right. So is there anyone in the public that would like to address the task force on items on this? Is it
not on this agenda?
It's not on the agenda. I know. I'm like, wait a minute. It says on this agenda. Set me up to fail. Not on this agenda.
Sorry.
Please raise your hand. Any public comments that are not pertain to items that are not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Seeing no hands. We're going to close that section. Do I have to vote for it? It doesn't say anything.
No.
Okay. And then is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for January 21st?
Make a motion.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor of closing tonight's meeting, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Sorry we didn't get to your item, Atisha. And
That's okay.
good night.
Thanks, everybody.
I should have said it before.
Thank you, guys.
I should have said it before, but you guys go on the concept board and do some homework if you can. It'll make the meeting a lot faster next time, because I don't want to put it on another meeting.
No,
And we gotta get it done. So spend a little bit of time, please. Drink a cup of coffee, do some doodling.
If anyone needs technical help with concept board, feel free to reach out to me. But it's very easy to use and put comments.
You have office hours, or are you just free whenever, I wake up at 3 in the morning and want to get off there?
I would say like between 10 to 7-ish. And then it's my no screen.
And that's lunch. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
It's dinner now, right, Adam?
All right, good night all.
Yeah,
Leslie,
exactly.
Leslie, could you send the concept
I
board
lost
link
you
again?
anyway here.
Yeah, I'll send out the link one more time.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Leslie.
We still have 8 attend.
Oh, we do. It's funny. I don't know why I look so red. I know
You
there's
do.
no
It looks like there's a
external-
fire.
I know. There's no external light
It's a
from
really
the outside.
It's probably a really warm light that you have on.
I guess. It doesn't look like this,
During the day, you don't look like that.
No, I don't. But okay. Well, thanks, you guys. I'm gonna sign off. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, Leslie, I'll talk to you tomorrow, and
Okay.
I'll help you with the letters to see.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, talk to you
We'll
later.
talk tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.